What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 31 of the Club and Sub podcast. This week we're doing UFC Vegas 16, Vettori versus Hermansson. As usual, you got me, John Stargarian. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox with Lags at Lags_the Capper, Luke at SWR_betting. C will be with us a little later. I think he's on the way back from the gym right now. So we believe C will be with us. Quinn's going to be off for a couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll be back before the end of the season, but if not, we'll see him next year. And so, yeah, as usual, I'm wearing the square hat. Truthfully, the way the last month and a half or two has gone, it's pretty apt at the moment. Square as a fucking square. But yeah, from squaresandshorts.com, great company. They give 1% of their profits to charity. If you're into gambling-related merch, they have it on there. So yeah, go check that out. And, if you could just, if you like the podcast, you enjoy what we do, whether you follow us or fade us, if you could just drop a like and subscribe, that would be great and be really helpful for us going forward. So, yeah, with that, I guess real quick, we'll just do a recap from last week. For me, it was a total bloodbath. My first play of the night, I had Luke Sanders at -110, had 2.5 units on him. I felt like I capped the fight appropriately, to be honest, in hindsight. He looked like he could do whatever he wanted. I guess, he truly is an unreliable player. And I think sometimes I just don't value enough, really. I could tell, he was going to lose. I mean, not that he was going to lose the fight, but I had a feeling something bad was coming at about the 7-minute mark where he just started lunging into the pocket to exchange. So it is what it is. Lost 2.5 units there. I tracked 1 unit late on Rachel Ostovich, +170. I expected her to come out and try to grapple. As it turned out, she had no chance to do that and tried to kickbox, and she just got mauled. Also a bad bet. I had 3 units on Ashley Evan Smith, +125. In hindsight, I don't necessarily regret the bet on Evan Smith just because of the unknowns with Dumont. The sizing obviously could have been better, and truthfully, I probably should have just bought out of some of that before the fight started. But, Dumont turned out to be better than I thought. Evan Smith allegedly was hurt. But either way, she got beaten like a mule. Dumont looked -200, to be honest. So just another bad bet. And then I had Takashi Sato. And again, that was another bad bet. Lags actually played this the right way, playing the under with it. That was clearly the sharp angle to play there. I undervalued. I think I took too much from Baeza getting hit a bit by Matt Brown. He's probably a better fighter than Takashi Sato. So, yeah, that sucked. I had a couple of track bets. You guys, the guys, they saw. I played a couple of dogs that hit. It doesn't matter. Last week was a dumpster fire. Last month was pretty much a disaster altogether. Happy to turn the page to December, and hopefully we can close this year strong. Legs, how was your week?
Not too bad. Broke even pretty much. So I guess I'll talk about the winning plays first. So I had 1 unit on the Mudarji Gordon under 2.5 rounds at -165. I guess the only regret is not putting more on that. I feel like that was like one of my sharper reads of the card. Gordon pretty hittable, pretty chinny. As you just touched on, the Baeza Sato under 2.5, that cashed. Evan Smith, you touched on that. Whether it was a bad bet or not, I don't know. Tough to say with all the unknowns, but I think at plus money, I don't hate the bet really. And then I had half unit on Spike round 1, round 2. Yeah, I mean, I think he had a deep sub, and I also had a quarter unit on Spike round 1 sub at +1700. I mean, he had the sub deep in round 1, yeah. So I mean, a quarter unit shot at that odds, I don't really hate the bet. And again, I was just playing it small, playing his win conditions. I wasn't laying the chalk with him, so don't hate it. But finished 2 and 3 plus 0.25 units, so 4 straight winning events.
Nice, Legs. You were definitely leading the pack here last month. What do you got? What'd you have? I got to go for you.
Yeah, a little rough one for me. It was actually my worst event since September. Not like a terrible one in terms of loss. I only lost a little under 2 units, I think 1.98, but it was one of those cards that just sucked in the sense that I had so many early reads on that I decided to pass, and virtually all of them hit. And I ended up with 3 official plays, and I ended up going 1 for 2. First bet of the night, I was also on the under 2.5 for Mudarji. I think that was, as Lags touched on, probably one of the sharper, easiest cashes of the card. I saw it all over Twitter too. I think pretty much everybody was on that fight in some sort of capacity.
Like -210.
That hit. So props to everybody out there who Yeah, so I had it for 2.5 units at minus 165. So I'm like, yes, solid start to the night. And then shit went downhill from there. I played Evan Smith for 2.5 units at plus 105. Kind of as John touched on, I don't want to say I don't regret the bet because obviously the girl got dominated, but I more so regret the unit sizing as you touched on. It should have been more like a 1 unit play in the sense because long term, obviously that sounds stupid. Hindsight 2020, the girl got absolutely rolled and killed. And obviously, what's her name? Dumont looked obviously like massive value in that spot. And I don't disagree, but it's one of those spots also where I'd rather bet on a fighter with some more knowns against someone with unknowns. And it was one of those spots where I just went too heavy on it. But I think long-term kind of fading those spotty fighters who, props to Dumont, she came out and had an excellent performance, but I don't necessarily think you can anticipate that going forward in the aggregate sample size of kind of in that similar scenario. So I more so regret the unit sizing than anything. And then the last bet on Sato was just a bad one. Z had me on his podcast earlier this week. I think he hit the nail on the head on this one, and I categorically disagreed with him on about every single point. So props to Z. If you're in the chat, you called that one. My reasoning there was I thought he'd be able to play the range game a little bit better and not let Baeza really kind of control that distance, get off on his game. But he also mentioned, oh, well, he's just not high volume. He's not high volume. And that honestly proved to be a big part of the fight where even if it went to the cards, I think Baez is winning. But also, the grappling component obviously really came into play as well, which was somewhat of an unknown on Baeza, but he is a black belt. So yeah, that was there's really no way to justify that in any way, shape, or form. So ended the night down 2 units, but looking to rebound this week.
Yeah, well, we're going to rebound this week, hopefully. Not going to win. It's got to happen at some point, right? Just make sure it happens, if nothing else. But anyway, we'll get into this card. First fight of the night, we got a pair of cannibals here. We have Manu 8 John Vellante taking on the Manu 8 Jake Collier. It's going to be it'll be a interesting fight if nothing else. But so I guess I don't have a bet here. I think it's kind of impossible to have a strong opinion on this fight, obviously. I guess the one thing I'd say is, the two of them classically, if you were to take them and their best forms of them, I'd probably think Collier is a bit more skilled and a bit more reliable to win minutes. But, that said, you look at Collier against Aspinall, and that fight was fast, so I don't really know what you can take from it. But he didn't really seem to move very well. He didn't really look like he wanted to be there. The guy was tweeting about, looking for packs of skull while out in Abu Dhabi. I don't really know how seriously he's taking it or not. Like I said, I don't have really much interest in a bet here, but at least Vellante, for as bad as he was against Mo Green, put up a fight, threw leg kicks, went forward, attempted strikes. So I don't know. I guess I lean Vellante, but playing minus 200 against the guy who, at least at some point, his career was more skilled, just doesn't seem wise. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really intrigued to lay any money on this fight. I kind of think the over 1.5 might not be a bad lean here, but it's just a pass altogether. I can't put money on this fight, honestly.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, you guys know I love my dumpster fires, but this is not a dumpster fire I'm willing to invest my money in for a lot of the reasons you touched on, John. It's like, who really knows where the Collier guy's at, just with how he showed up in terms of his shape. When you go back, the guy's just legitimately a completely different human being. So from a capping perspective, it's almost impossible, especially since the only one fight sample size we have lasted less than, what was it, like a couple minutes or so. So
less than a minute.
Was it less than a minute? Yeah. So you really have no idea of where the guy's truly at. Clearly is not taking his career very seriously in terms of a comeback. So I do think it's a decent spot for Vellante, but I'm not also trying to lay minus 200 on John Vellante for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned too. So it's a pass for me.
Yeah, agreed. So next fight of the night, we got Damon Jackson taking on Ilia Topuria. Lag, I'll start with you here. What do you got?
Yeah, so I actually went ahead and parlayed Topuria early here. I got him at minus 184 for 2 units with a guy later on the card. But yeah, I pretty much think Topuria's got this fight covered everywhere it goes. I think he's got the better striking. I think he's got better wrestling. I think Damon Jackson only has the advantage in jiu-jitsu here. So I think Topuria, honestly, the only knock on him would be his potential cardio. But as we saw in the last fight, it was a short notice spot. So I don't really think you can take much away from him there. So I think, honestly, Topuria is pretty live for a finish here in this spot, but I'm just playing him straight on the money line here.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so originally going into this, I guess I'll preface by saying I'm as high on Topuria as a lot of people are. But originally going into it, just looking at the line, I actually thought I was going to be playing Damon Jackson. And then I kind of digged into tape, and kind of the real commonality theme that I took away from it is I think outside of just even pure skill set for skill set, I think the athleticism and speed of Topuria is just gigantic. And so at least in terms of when this fight's on the feet, I actually don't think Jackson's boxing is that bad, but I definitely give a clear edge on the feet to Topuria there. On the ground, I guess, is where it kind of gets interesting, because obviously both guys are the kind of fighters that rely and thrive in the scramble situation. So it's one of those situations where, you know, who really comes out on top of it, which is why I guess I'm a little lower on Topuria in this spot. I still favor him. But I'm not going to lie. I still do think the line is a tad wide. It's not enough for me to bet Jackson. But this Topuria guy could end up, you know, proving to be the truth. But, you know, this Damon Jackson guy is tough dude, you know, battle tested, been around for a while. I don't think he's necessarily a guy that is just going to get ran through. So that's not to say that Topuria, you know, is sub or bust. But, you know, if we're getting also into these kind of scrambling type exchanges, I'm not necessarily convinced that Topuria necessarily dominates in that realm either. But I'm going to pick him to win, but I do think the line is a little wide.
Real quick, John. I actually forgot. I'm also on the under 2.5 as well. I grabbed that for a unit at -112 when FanDuel opened that.
Yeah, so I actually parlayed Topuria with Curtis Blades. So obviously that didn't happen. So instead of -109 parlay, I'm sitting on a Topuria -220 ticket. I mean, look. I obviously thought do think there's some value on Topuria, or I wouldn't have parlayed him. Again, don't love having a -220 ticket on him, but I do sort of agree with Lags. Like Topuria is not as good a wrestler as Bektic. Clearly, like Bektic is one of the best wrestlers in the division. Yeah. But Topuria is pretty aggro, attempting takedowns, and I don't think Jackson's got the best takedown defense. And once the fight was there, Bektic was able to put him in a ton of bad situations. And while Bektic maybe has more fundamentally sound jiu-jitsu than Topuria, I kind of get the feeling that Topuria is more dangerous with it, and I sort of think Topuria puts him in those same situations. The chance for a sub is relatively high, and kind of to your point, Luke, on the feet, I think Topuria is going to be the better striker there, bigger hitter, a little faster, maybe not quite as technically sound, but I just think he's a bit more reliable. The concern, I guess, is kind of cardio. We saw him fade a bit down the stretch against the wall. But, it's worth mentioning, he had those two kind of scary moments when he kind of leaned back against the fence. But then he landed 2 takedowns right after that and rode him out on top the rest of the round. And so it's like, I am concerned about it, but it was also short notice. So I'm not it's not something where I think it's like a given Topuria is going to gas out here. And like I said, I think he's got significantly higher finishing upside, especially in the first portion of the fight. Move on, and we have
real quick, John. Real quick, I just want to make one little quick point for Jackson, at least in terms of the Bektic fight. It is important to note that he did take that fight on 3 days' notice, and even in every single one of those rounds, he had Bektic in some bad spots. Even that Kimura put on him. To be honest, I think that probably finishes 60 to 70% of guys, even in the second round towards the end. Yeah. He was landing some nasty elbows that clearly hurt Bektic, where he got up super slow. You throw an extra 20 seconds on there, I'm not convinced he doesn't finish Bektic in the second. And then obviously he finished him in the third. So I think, at least in terms of like the Bektic largely just kind of grinding him in that fight, there were a lot of very good moments for Damon Jackson, even prior to the finish in the third round too. So once again, not saying that's the end all be all, but I'm saying I think he might be getting even in an upset win. I think he might be getting a slight bad rap in that fight, because I think he did have solid moments.
Luke, it sounds like you want to bet David Jackson. That's what it sounds like.
I really do. I want to go.
What number do you need for him, Luke?
Well, what's he sitting at now? Like plus 200?
I think Topuria was sitting -233, something like that. Yeah. So
yeah,
give me Damon Jackson plus 233. I'll play him.
Okay, you might get there.
I like that. Yeah.
we move on. We got Jimmy the Brick Flick taking on Cody Durden. Durden's making his second appearance in the UFC after a draw with Chris Gutierrez. Flick coming off a beatdown of Nate Smith on Contender Series. Luke, what do you got here?
Yep. So first bet of the night, I have 1.5 units on Cody Durden at plus 175. I kind of got in at like the drop-off point because he was kind of stagnant at some of these bigger dog odds, and then at one point it just plunged. Thank God I got in right before the proverbial plunge. But ultimately, obviously, Flick is a very dangerous guy, and Durden comes from a wrestling background. So I guess my big thing going into this is like, okay, if he decides to sit there and wrestle solely and oblige Flick in that game, that's not to say he couldn't win this fight via wrestling and just control pass position and avoid subs, because I think that is a potential in this fight too. But he's also putting himself in the most precarious spots. But I do have in somewhat decent confidence that Cody Durden is going to come out here and box, which was kind of what my big question was coming in. And if I think he does that, I actually do think he has the better hands here, and at a decent dog price over a guy who has been knocked out before, who's pretty loose on the feet, against a guy in Durden who is pretty aggressive. I'm willing to take the shot. I think if you're playing Flick, instead of actually laying that bigger favorite money, I kind of think you should be playing sub, because I don't necessarily, despite him actually having a lot of offensive wrestling success, I don't necessarily think he has that against a guy like Cody Durden. Cody Durden just is one of those guys who's just a dog. I mean, he came in even to that Chris Gutierrez fight as a decent sized underdog and goes out and 10-8s the guy in the first round, obviously loses the next two rounds and it's a draw, but coming in on short notice and 10-8ing a Chris Gutierrez. I know you guys aren't as high on a Chris Gutierrez as I am, but I don't think that's an easy task, and that's something super impressive in your UFC debut. So giving me a plus 175 on a guy who's a dog, who I think has a few different paths to victory, who's going to fight for my money, I like it.
Yeah, so I played Durden also. I played him last week because Bet 365 had him at plus 200, while the rest of the market had him at around plus 180. But even where he is right now, like plus 140, plus 135, I actually think he should be a favorite here, to be honest. My personal opinion
he's actually still, sorry, real quick, he's actually still plus 156 on FanDuel.
Okay, yeah. So if you have FanDuel or Betfair, you can get him there now. I just kind of look at it and it's like, yeah, I mean, pure jiu-jitsu, I would certainly favor Flick, but like I don't really see where else Flick even is close here. Like Durden, look, obviously he's pretty raw, and he gassed out against Gutierrez, but the Gutierrez fight was on a week's notice, and it was a lot of heavy grappling in round one. And kind of to your point, Luke, I don't really expect Durden, and I have it on somewhat good authority, to come out and look to wrestle Flick here. And I sort of do think, I don't think Flick's wrestling is very good. His top game's good, but I'm pretty sure, or not sure, but I'm pretty confident that he's going to defend most of Flick's takedown attempts with relative ease here. He fought Jared Scoggins regionally, and Scoggins' wrestling is pretty legit. And, Scoggins was landing takedowns, but he was having to work real hard to get him and really couldn't keep Durden there. And so it's like, I don't think if Scoggins was struggling that much to get him down, I don't think Jimmy Flick's going to get him down. And yeah, like on the feet, I don't think it's close. Like, Flick's got some hard kicks, but he's very easy to hit. He has a bad tendency when you push him backwards to just kind of shell up. We've seen him look, I don't want to say he's quit in the cage, but it seems like when things go against him standing, like his reaction is not to really move circleage, just kind of eat damage. And like he's been finished 4 times like as a result of that. And so like my feeling here is like, if Flick can land takedowns, and I'm wrong about that, I still think it's possible that Durden can fight up and make this competitive fight and win. And if it turns out Durden's just the superior athlete, I think it's possible he just completely washes him out here. So, like, I have Durden as a slight favorite myself. And so, yeah, I have 2.5 units on him. Like I said, I got plus 200, but I really think he's playable where he is now as well. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, I think you guys echoed a lot of the main points here. I mean, you touched on it right there, John. I don't think Flick's wrestling is all that good. And then on the feet, he really doesn't throw his hands that much. He mostly just kicks, and that's about it. Doesn't really mix it in much on the feet. So for him to mix in the takedowns without having much on the feet, I don't think it's really going to, confuse Durden as much on the feet. And then, so I pretty much think that Flick is that type of killer, be killed type of fighter. So I actually think Durden inside the distance isn't a bad play here. So I'm actually tempted to play Durden round 1, round 2. It's plus 420 right now. But
yeah, I don't mind
the plays right now, but yeah.
420 you said for round 1, round 2?
What?
FanDuel?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. I kind of think it's an early finish. Yeah.
I played him by knockout in Z's free roll this week.
Nice.
I like it. Yeah. So here, I'll read you the props off real quick, I guess, while I'm sitting here. So dirt in round 1, round 2's plus 420, flick round 1, round 2's plus 135, and then dirt in round 3 decisions plus 340.
Okay, I don't hate that. I kind of want. I mean, I wouldn't play 3 decision, to be honest.
No, I'd play the dirt in round 1, round 2 plus 420. So that's probably my lean. I'd probably put a half unit on it myself. So that's my lean so far.
So I think we should probably skip the Wyman leave it fight so C can have his day in court here for the people. So we'll circle back.
Is he coming back? Is he coming back soon?
He said he would be on at 8:30. Remember the whole Central Time conversation we had?
Oh yeah, so that's So that's like 10. So he's got like 10 minutes.
Yeah, so he should be on in about 10. Yeah, we're like cruising through this right now. So we go to the next fight. We got Luis Smoka taking on Jose Alberto Tekko Quinones. And I don't know. I mean, I think we discussed this a couple weeks back when this was originally booked. I don't really have
Actually, I was looking at that too. Actually, it was canceled before I think the party started. So
really?
I was looking through my notes. I didn't even have any notes on this fight because we didn't even have a podcast for it.
So I don't have like too strong of feelings here. Like I think my lean at the line would be Tekko, but like my basic thinking is like, look, Quinones has been larger the more efficient striker for his career. You know, the guy's, he's done a good job just outpacing his opponents fight to fight. He's probably the better boxer here. And then in terms of the grappling, like Smolka is obviously super dangerous on the mat, but I don't think Smolka is a very good wrestler. And I don't think Quinones is a great wrestler either, but I do think he's probably a little better than Smolka is and can probably keep the fight standing for large stretches. But that said, you look at Smolka's last few fights and like, I don't know, his striking looked pretty good against Kenny. He was eating a lot of shots, but he was throwing doing some heavy work to the body. Was somewhat impressive. And so like, I just think about this and it's like, I kind of, in the event the fight goes to a decision, I favor Quinones slightly, which, why not play in a plus 115? But I think Smolka's got significantly higher finishing upside in this fight. And so it's like, I need a lot better than 115 to play him, I think. Like, I kind of view this as pretty much evens, maybe slightly in Smolka, because I do think Smolka can probably be competitive on minutes if he's as aggro with his striking as he was against Kenny. But I don't really trust Smolka. And by the same token, Quinones is shown to be a bit chinny, and I don't think he's got the most functional jiu-jitsu game either if the fight goes to the mat. I haven't really looked at the props much, but Smolka's submission could be interesting. Lags, what's your thinking here?
Here, I can look that up for you, actually. I'm still chilling on FanDuel. So Smolka by submission is plus 340.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I actually made a play on this fight about an hour ago, actually. I put a unit on the under 2.5 at plus 150.
I like that.
So
yeah.
So that line's actually still sitting on FanDuel. Yeah, I kind of just think it's just a super scrambly fight. Both these guys are pretty defensively flawed on the feet and defensively flawed on the mat. And then I was actually looking pretty heavy into the records here. Smolka hasn't lost a decision in over 3 years, and he hasn't won by decision in over 5 years. So I'm kind of think like he's in that same kind of like kill or be killed type of spot.
Yeah,
so I like the under 2.5. But I think that if Smolka fucks up a little bit, I think Quinones has a chance to snatch up a sub here as well.
Luke, your thoughts here?
Yeah, no real strong opinion. I guess I was kind of looking at that under 2.5 as well, but I guess the only reason I stayed away is just because I don't see a ton of finishing upside from Tekko. And usually when I'm playing my under 2.5, I like to kind of have that other opponent consideration. Yeah. But at least based on the line, I kind of would say, at least from a betting perspective, with Tekko, even though I do think Smolka, ever since, kind of coming back and making his re-debut, it seems like his hands are a little bit better. Like you said, you touched on the Kenny fight, even though I think in some categories he felt like a dumbass because it ultimately is what ended up getting him knocked out because he didn't move his fucking head. But in even the fight before that against Ryan McDonald, he looked solid too. But in terms of at least Tekko, or I should say Smolka, in terms of his submission grappling, as you touched on, John, his offensive wrestling isn't great. And that's kind of usually where Tekko is struggling. So as you also touched on, I think he might struggle to get the fight down, and it just could be kind of this back and forth fight where Tekko is, as you touched on again, the more efficient striker. And, we'll see. It's a fight I don't really have a strong opinion on, but I don't hate the under 2.5. I guess I'd be more intrigued by the Smolka sub line at those big numbers. I think that's probably the play for the fight if you want to play it.
See, any opinion on Smolka Quinones?
No play.
All right.
Real quick. Sorry, Luke. Also, Smolka by sub or points is -105 too. If that interests you.
-105. Quinones has gotten hurt a bunch on the feet, though. That's like begging.
And then Smolka ITD is +170.
That's not so bad.
It's just kind of a fight I want to stay away from, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it's really easy to pick a side or be pretty confident here, but I think violence is a good bet in this spot.
So I made us pass over this fight, C. So we're going to circle back to it now. Matt Wyman, Jordan Leavitt, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I put Wyman for 3 units. I'm like okay. I'm okay. I don't know. All right, I don't know how to I think there's like a good case scenario where Wyman comes out here and looks like hindsight 50-50. We've seen a lot of people debut who have quick finish meme subs, and then all of a sudden you get somebody who has some cardio and is somewhat competent grappling, and then all of a sudden your fucking -2,000 meme turns into something that looks like +400 after 7 minutes. And Leavitt does dumb shit all the time. I mean, he is aggressive and pursuing submissions, but eventually you're probably going to gas out. And the way I see it going is I don't see why Wyman can't just land a takedown of his own and grind some top time. Whereas Leavitt, it's not really his MO to just grind out Wyman. And yes, Wyman can be grinded out and he can be taken down. We've seen that happen. But I mean, the guy came back at 37. I don't know if he's check hunting or what, but he got fucking put in against Pena, who is a dangerous ass fighter. Even though he doesn't have a bunch of finishes, Pena's pretty dangerous. In Selecki, who has elite jiu-jitsu for the division. And then all of a sudden, Leavitt's -400. So Leavitt basically has to do what Selecki did to justify his line. And Leavitt's not even a fucking 1/4 of the grappler that Selecki is. So I just don't really understand how somebody could come in here and confidently think Leavitt should be fucking -400. It doesn't even make sense. And then there's a whole nother population of people who think yeah, you can't bet Leavitt, and then they don't want to bet Wyman. So it doesn't your rationale doesn't make sense. If you're not going to bet Leavitt, then you have to think that there's some value on Wyman. I happen to think that Wyman is going to come in there and look hindsight 50-50-ish. 3rd round sub for Wyman.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. I don't have 3 units on Matt Wyman, but C kind of touched on it a bit. If Joe's Wyman was +250 against Pena and +300 against Selecki. If Selecki or Pena fought Leavitt, they'd probably each be over -300 against him. I think both of them would pretty much do to Leavitt what they did to Wyman fairly easily. It's kind of weird. I've seen takes comparing Leavitt to Ryan Hall this week, and it's I guess that maybe Ryan Hall when he was 16 and he had his blue belt, that's that's maybe that's where the comparison is. C touched on the guy basically. I appreciate how often he attacks submissions, and he probably amplifies his own win condition by doing it like that. But we've seen him slow down in the regional scene. He was losing rounds to 3-2 regional fighters. That literally happened. He was going to close decisions with regional fighters who were never going to sniff the UFC 1 year ago. And now Matt Wyman, who, look, yeah, he got dominated by Selecki and Pena, both of whom are pretty strong in top position and at controlling position, and both of whom are huge for the division, whereas Levitt's small for the division, like Wyman is going to do the same, just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, maybe Levitt gets on top of him early, but if Wyman was able to survive, submissions against Selecki for 15 minutes, I think he's probably going to be able to here as well. And, like he said, we've seen Levitt slow down. Like, if he gasses here or if Wyman starts hitting takedowns, Wyman's relatively schooled in jiu-jitsu. Like, if he gets on top of Levitt, I don't think he's going to get leg locked. And he might – like, Levitt could justify the minus 400 price tag, but it's also possible Wyman looks hindsight minus 200 here. And so I played Wyman for a half unit plus 330. I also kind of think the goes to decision line at plus money is pretty interesting because I really don't think Levitt's going to submit Wyman here, and I don't think he's going to KO him. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Legs, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what you guys touched on. I mean, I think Levitt's competition is pretty suspect. I think his wrestling overall is pretty suspect, and I think his striking is pretty shit. So to put him minus 400, like almost here in the spot, I just don't really see it. But like at the same time, I can't really put money on Wyman at the stage of his career. I don't know. That's my take on the fight personally. This is a common take. I get it, but I think if it gets up to plus 400, I would probably take a stab. It's not that I don't think there's value now. It's just personal because I just can't be laying money on aging fighters.
Luke, what about you?
So actually a play I'm really considering here is the over 2.5 at plus 100 for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. I don't necessarily know if I'm comfortable putting my money on Matt Wyman, but at least from a stylistic standpoint, I really don't hate the punt because as you guys touched on, you look at the Luis Pena fight, obviously a guy who's much bigger, brutalized him on the feet, brutalized him on the ground. Joe Selecki, obviously very accomplished grappler, decent wrestler too, controlled position, peppered on top, did what he needed to do. Where is there any even comparison what we've seen in Jordan Levitt? He's one of those funky submission guys. As Lags touched on too, I don't overtly rate his wrestling crazily strong. And I'm honestly, even in the event that Levitt gets top position, I'm not convinced that Matt Wyman doesn't sweep him or take his back either. And then on the feet, he has absolutely no striking, whereas Matt Wyman isn't this credentialed boxer, kickboxer either. But even if Matt Wyman just goes full retard on the feet and just starts throwing strikes, he's going to be more active. And I guarantee you he's hitting Jordan Levitt and doing more than Jordan Levitt's doing on the feet. So I taped this pretty intensely today. And I'm almost like just talking myself out of not playing Matt Wyman because I think he's worth a punt. I'm not saying, no offense, I'm not saying put 3 units on Matt Wyman, but a half a unit shot on Wyman, I really don't hate it because from a stylistic perspective, I mean, let's look at it for 2 seconds. Is Jordan Levitt going out here and knocking out Matt Wyman? I highly doubt it. There's nothing to suggest he will. Can Jordan Levitt go out here and win minutes on top time? Potentially, but I don't also overtly see that being high percentage just based on also Wyman being scrambly too. Also, when in the guys he's fought, being bigger and being better in top position than Levitt is. So what does that leave you with? That leaves you with a Levitt sub and a guy who's at minus 400. Yeah, kind of interesting. So I get the understanding, he's 39. I can't play him. But from a stylistic standpoint, I think he could be worth a punt. But a play I'm really heavily considering as well as that over 2.5 because I don't think Levitt finishes him.
Yeah. I don't mind it. And so we move on. I'm going to stay with you here. We got Movsar Evloev taking on Nate Landwehr.
Yeah, I'm punting this weekend. I'm going. I'm punting. Yeah, I played Nate 2.5 units plus 450. I'll probably play another half a unit at plus 500 and probably put another half unit on the decision plus 750 because I just want to do things like that in my life right now. But, yeah, I mean, Evloev, look, I'm high on him. I like him. Nate's faced some pretty good grapplers. I don't think this is like he's insta-grapple fuck here. He throws volume, moves forward. I don't think Evloev has, like, a super high percentage finish. in this spot. So, like, I know I've seen, like, minus 900 and, minus 1,000. And Evlov, has to be the side. But, I think Evlov, like, conservatively should really be, like, in the minus 225, minus 250 range. Minus 600, minus 700, kind of bonkers. Pretty sure he was in some type of, like, motorcycle accident, wasn't he? He was out for a bit. I honestly have no fucking idea what it was, but yeah, I mean, I just don't really I can't really justify like Evlov minus 600. It just doesn't make sense. And if you want to take a stab on Nate, you should probably just take the decision line. I don't really see a finish in Nate's path, but plus 750 on something that I think is favored to go to decision. What's decision, like minus 225 right now or something?
It's minus 175.
Yeah, so I mean, it's favored to hit the scorecards, and you're getting almost 8-1 on Nate. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean, who knows? I mean, he could just completely get fucking suffocated, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And judges like volume, so we'll see.
See, check the comment on the screen if you can without getting into a car accident.
I have you here until you find new home after Sunday. I don't want to live in a fucking village and ride around on horses.
Anyway, yeah, I mostly agree with Steve's take here. I haven't played it yet. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, I love Evlov. I played him big against Grundy at like minus 180, but I kind of think that should speak volumes about where this line is. Like, Evlov was minus 180 against Mike Grundy, with a lot of people in the community laying money on Mike Grundy and calling it an upset spot. And now he's minus 700 against Nate Landwehr. Like, that's just kind of strange. Like, look, I don't think Landwehr is the best grappler. I think he's got real good first level takedown D. But someone that chains takedowns together like Evlov does, I'd expect to land them. It's just like, I don't think Evlov is necessarily the best control grappler on top either. I think he's kind of better at grinding you out against the cage. And, C touched on it. Nate's fought a lot of grapplers before, and he's, he'll do a decent job working for underhooks. It's just more like, I agree with him being a big favorite, like 75% or so, like that, like minus 300, like that's fair. But to cover, where he is now, I just don't think he's got a ton of finishing upside. Like, he's not really much of a submission guy, and he's not a huge hitter. He's undersized for the division. Like, I don't think it's hard for me to see him finishing this more than like 15 to 20% of the time. And it's like to be able to cover like 88% implied, you have to have like massive finishing upside here. And I just don't see it. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And it's like, if Nate does do a good job stuffing the early takedowns, or this does turn into something like, the Enrique Barzola fight, it's like you're going to be sweating bullets, especially with the pace that Nate's going to bring as well. So I might play Landwehr. I haven't decided yet. I honestly, if fight goes to decision minus 175, I really like. I think if Evlov gets on top, he's probably going to prioritize control, and he's not like a huge ground and pound guy. So I don't know. I think that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. But yeah, I don't have a play yet. I do think this line is like borderline criminal though at the moment. Wags, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar thoughts, I guess, on that. But at the same time, I was actually able to get early on Evlov here at minus 350. He closes out my parlay with Tapuria, so it's minus 102 for 2 units. Yeah, when this fight got booked, honestly, I was like, I don't know what the UFC is doing. I don't know why this matchup was even made. I don't know. You go from Mike Grundy back down to Nate Landwehr here, so I don't know. I mean, C did make a lot of good points. I think the finishing upside for Evlov here isn't too highly, but at the same time, if he's able to control Nate and wrestle him for 15 minutes, then he could be gassed and finish him late in the third round. So I think, I don't know. I don't hate the, I was looking at the round 3 decision prop for Movistar. It's minus 185 if you didn't take him already. I think that might be a decent play, because I think by decision is over 2.5 to 1. No, that's weird. Oh, so his round 3 decision is minus 185. His points is minus 135.
Luke, how are you?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I actually have a play here. I moved in on it today. I got 2 units on Evloev by decision at -135. I think you guys made a lot of good points for Landwehr. And honestly, I can't disagree. Even in watching tape, like the big thing I noticed, like a lot of his fights, he's really struggled in the wrestling and grappling. But ultimately, the big component is that he has a crazy gas tank. And honestly, the guy's just an absolute wild man. And guys just gas themselves out trying to wrestle him. And then he kind of makes, some sort of a comeback. So I always talk about this in terms of optics and whatnot. So if, as you touched on too, John, if this turns into the Enrique Barzola fight, where, even if Evloev is consistent in terms of landing his takedowns and he starts to get tired and Landwehr, comes on late, might be sweating a little bit. So I definitely don't hate the punt on Landwehr at all, but it's just one of those situations where you also touched on, I think that Evloev just chains his wrestling together so well, but he's also not a guy who is hunting for submissions necessarily. He's more a positional ride you kind of guy and wear you down. Whereas even in saying that, I do think Landwehr has the gas to sustain that, but it's also, once again, how often, I guess, do you assign the percentage to a potential like squeaking out the split or, a potential KO finish? But I will agree with all of you guys in saying that I do think the line is wide. I don't think Evloev should be -600 here just with the lack of finishing upside, but it's also one of those spots where I think it could also be a potential trap to bet the dog. I kind of compare this spot to the Jake Matthews, Diego Sanchez situation where Jake Matthews is -600, but his decision line is +120 when that's the most likely outcome. So it's one of those spots where I just think it's kind of a mistake from odds makers. So I'm not saying that Landwehr can't beat him and it would be a great upset. I'm not saying there isn't actually value on the Landwehr current line. But to be honest, I think the decent chunk of the time, despite the line being wide, Evloev just grinds him out and wins a decision. So at -135, a little over 55%, I'm willing to make the play.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And look, I do think Evloev's going to win this fight pretty easily, to be honest. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I'm just more saying, does he win it at a 90% clip? That I don't really buy. But yeah,
I'm not saying he does either. I'm not saying he does either.
I'm just more saying in the chat where everybody's like, Nate sucks. Yeah, I think both C and I agree that Mosar is the better fighter. I'm very, very high on him. It's just more of is Mosar going to win this 8 or 9 out of 10 times? That I don't really buy.
Yeah,
with small finishing upside.
Just putting a disclaimer on all the punts. They're going to be covered by Superior inside the distance. So I think Magic will like that, right? I could bet 25 units on Taporia inside the distance, and then free roll Wyman and Nate. That's the plan. If he doesn't win inside the distance, then Magic might have to change his avatar to Dan from Best Fight Picks for a couple months.
Yeah, Taporia inside the distance for C's house.
Yeah. The next podcast he's going to be coming to you from the mean streets of Chicago.
Yeah.
That's me and Wyman will be fucking underneath the
He's going to be in a rowboat in the Chicago River. Anyway, on to more serious things. We got Roman Dolidze taking on John Alon. Lags, I think you have a bet here, right?
Yeah, I do. So I'm not really laying the chalk here with the leads. I think the cardio concerns could be a factor here. But at the same time, I think his finishing upside is pretty strong here. I took a 1 unit Dolidze inside the distance of +100. I think on the feet, it's pretty 50-50, but I would favor the output and the power of Dolidze. And on the mat, I wouldn't exactly say Dolidze is a fish out of water. He's a brown belt himself. And as of defensive grappling and offensive wrestling go, I think the Leeds is pretty strong in that aspect. I don't think Allen's just going to be out here successfully shooting takedowns on him. So I kind of think that this fight's going to stay standing, and I think the Leeds is going to be able to find a KO or potentially a club and sub.
Yeah, fair. Luke, what do you think here?
So this is an interesting one for me. I know we've kind of talked about it in the chat, John, where obviously the Dolidze guy's this your prototypical round one guy. So automatically I just have, red flags about those guys in terms of what happens if the fight's extended, because we just really haven't seen it. Actually, I know he did. I think he did go into the third round, but in that fight, he did go into the third round against that one guy. Super, super low volume, ultimate staring contest. So once again, interesting consideration for Alon. So I'm actually kind of almost tempted to bet Alon. I don't like the current price, but if he kind of starts squeaking up closer to that plus 200 number, I'm willing to take the shot, just because I feel like if he doesn't get deaded, I feel like he can just do more here. Obviously, the whole he gets deaded narrative is a very live consideration here. I concede that. But actually, instead of that play, the one I'm really looking at that I have not played yet is the over 1.5. It's one that I've kind of had my eye on over the course of the last week, and I was really surprised that it's sitting at favorite money. I was almost positive, based on the fact that the Leeds is this big finisher, that we'd be seeing the under 1.5 at minus money. But apparently the odds makers are kind of wise to this as well, and seeing that if the Leeds doesn't kill him, that this fight does go over at a decent clip. So I'm going to kind of sit on this one and see if, a ton of late under money, people wiki capping it and just assuming that he's going to kill him. Maybe he does once again, not shooting any legs. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. No. So like that's so real quick intervene. That's kind of like my take in general. Like, I think the Leeds, the inside the distance play at plus money, I think is the move here. I don't think it's a given if it goes to a decision that he's going to be on the winning end. And then to your point as well, the Leeds in round one would be plus 230 as a hedge if you wanted to play the over 1.5.
Yeah,
I think you're getting a good number on the round one.
It's just kind of one of those spots where, once again, I'd like a plus number if I'm playing the over 1.5 on a guy who is dangerous.
Right.
So if it doesn't get there, I'll probably stay away. But once again, it's one of these guys, historic first round. Hashtag, what did we see the other week? Koski, first round.
Yeah.
Oh, doesn't come. What the fuck happens? We see this all the time. So it's one of these spots where I actually do think we have seen some defensive improvements from Alon in terms of fighting at range better. He's bouncing in and out. He's starting to keep his guard higher than he has historically. So I think that's my play for the fight if I had to give one. But I'd like a plus number on it for the over 1.5.
I see. How about you?
Nothing there.
Yeah, so I mostly agree with Luke. To be honest, I like Alon here, and if it weren't for the fact that he got a PED suspension and hasn't fought in 2 years, I'd probably be on him already at this number. Like, just generally, I mean, Alon's game, while it's not great, it's pretty sloppy. It is based on going forward and being really busy, attempting takedowns and attempting a lot of strikes. And given what we've seen from Dela, which is a lot of just kind of sit back and look for like single big power shots, what Alon does is a very nice counter to that, especially since he seems fairly durable. Like Mike Rodriguez, the guy may be a massive stump puller, but he hits very hard, and Alon wore the damage pretty well in that fight. And so, like, if everything was the same here, I would be on Alon, except, the fact that he has been off for 2 years and he did have a PED suspension is a pretty massive red flag. And it's like, I don't really want to play plus 160 and him come out here, look great for 5 minutes, and then just suddenly death gas, or alternatively, him just have no durability anymore and come out and just get deaded immediately. But I do kind of think the dynamic in a fight that goes to decision favors Alon. I agree with Legs that the finishing upside's more in Dele's favor. But, I'm kind of holding out this gets to maybe plus 200. It seems to be climbing. And yeah, like I just don't really trust people like Dela in general. Very, very much like in that Tyron Woodley, I'm going to sit back and just wait for my big moment type thing, because when that big moment doesn't come, usually they don't win. So, yeah, I lean Alon. I think there's probably value at the line right now, but, the other kind of outside the cage factors are enough for me to, like, not really get involved at the moment where it is. And with that said, we move on to pretty fun fight. We got Gabriel Benitez taking on Justin James. Luke, I believe you have a play here. What do you got?
Yeah, so no actually official play, but I do have a personal play on Benitez at minus 140. I jumped in on Bovada when they hung the line and everything else was like minus 180. So couldn't tip it, couldn't make it an official play, but obviously now he's skyrocketed up over minus 200. Yeah. It's one of those spots where actually I just think it's a good spot for Benitez were obviously the early odds makers and really just got this one wrong. I did have a big play on Gavin Tucker over Justin James. I believe Justin James opened. Tucker opened pretty heavily, and I waited all the way till he got all the way bet down. All the James money came in. I came in on Tucker at around pick'em, largely because he's another one of these guys who I actually do think is relatively well-rounded. He does come from a wrestling background. I believe he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but largely also a first-round finisher kind of guy who hasn't fought the greatest of competition in the world. Whereas you got a guy in Gabriel Benitez, who whereas UFC record is not great, he's one of these tough, battle-tested guys who has decent output. And I know the big thing people are going to be looking at here, at least in terms of Jane's backers, is, the Enrique Barzola fight, where he was taken down a ton. But it's like you also have to go back and watch that. You can't just look at UFC stats where he was taken down 9 times. He was really only controlled extensively of maybe one of those, and that's kind of been even a consistent theme throughout his career, whereas takedown defense in general is not great, but he's a guy who is really working back to his feet quite often, who does a good job of digging underhooks, getting off the cage, and who fights at range pretty well, who isn't an aggressive output type of guy. So that brings me once again back to the question kind of that we were talking about in the fight before. So what if that, early finish doesn't materialize from James, from what we've seen from him historically? Okay, well, can he go out there and grind out Gabriel Benitez? Maybe, but based on what I've seen against better guys, I highly doubt it. So it's one of those spots, I think it's a step up against a guy who's fought the much better guys, Benitez has been knocked out a few times, gets head kicked by Andre Fili, kind of a Mimi type KO, if I'm being honest, and then gets sparked by Sadiq Youssef, which I don't think there's, any real knock on him there. So ultimately, I do think all the line movement is justified. I don't think there's value at the current line, though. I think it's one of those spots, if you jumped in on it early on Benitez, you got some value. But, James, to give him some credit, he is a dangerous guy. So I don't necessarily know if I'd want to lay over minus 200 on Benitez. But if you got in on him early, I think that's the play.
See anything here?
Fight doesn't go to decision. Don't mind the under, same thing. I just think a finish is pretty highly likely. I don't know what the under is sitting at anymore. I think when I got the fight doesn't go to decision, it was like minus 135 or something. But I got in earlier.
Minus 126 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think James brings danger pretty early, fades as time goes on. So I just think there's pretty high likelihood of a finish, but I don't have a super strong opinion on either side.
Yeah, I did bet Benitez. I got in a little late on it. I got 2.5 units down on the minus 170. Obviously, that's long gone off the board now. And I've seen some claims that James is value at the current line, and I don't really see it, to be honest. I kind of view Benitez in that 70 or so % range, to be honest. I don't know. I guess I've always been a bit of a Gabriel Benitez truther, but he's not an easy guy to out kickbox. The amount of guys who have done it are pretty limited. Obviously, Luke, you touched on the head kick he took from Fili and, the knockout from Youssef. But before the Youssef knockout, he was absolutely piecing him up from range. He just got, clipped right on the button in mid-exchange. And, if you look at his last fight with Omar Morales, I think the size mattered a bit in that fight, and also just the fact that his leg was completely destroyed about 3 minutes into round 2. But,
sorry not to interrupt you, John, but still a competitive fight. Right. Despite him clearly losing, still a competitive fight. Yeah,
it was a great fight. And it's Benitez, if you look at first of all, the guy hits pretty hard. I think he's a pretty underrated hitter. His left straight is pretty powerful, and he's got pretty vicious body kicks. But, he's just pretty complete. I think his range distance striking defense is 72% or something crazy like that. And so it's could James come out here and KO him in the first round? Yes. That's probably his best win condition here. But it's not like James is any kind of a slick striker who's going to be setting that up and catching him. He's pretty slow. Most of what he does is telegraph. Benitez is quite quick and is pretty good at making reads in the pocket. It would surprise me if that's more than a 15 to 20% outcome, to be honest, despite James' power. It's just James, everything he does is kind of like waltz forward at you and fire bombs. And like against someone like Frank Camacho, who's miterally willing to bite down his mouthpiece and eat your shot, that's fine. But like, I kind of think Benitez can play the inside out game pretty easy here with him. And if he does land takedowns, so like I actually looked this up the other day. He's been taken down 18 times in the UFC and controlled for a total of 18 minutes. So he's basically on the map in average control time is about a minute per takedown. There is virtually no way James has the gas to come out here and attempt 5 to 6 takedowns, nor does he likely have the control game to keep him down. So, like, maybe the first round gets dicey and James marches forward and catches him with something. I think that's a pretty low percentage outcome, though, and I think after that it's likely Benitez just lighting him up a range. I don't mind the inside the distance plays. I don't mind underplays, but I honestly think Benitez is just level above James here at basically everything. So, yeah, I'm on Benitez. Lags, you have anything here?
Yeah, sorry, sound cut out there for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think this is a good live betting spot. Just wait until after round one, see how round one plays out. If he doesn't get deaded, then Benitez probably is going to take over this fight. I mean, not really much to add. James is a round one fighter, so I don't think you can be putting money on him here, to be honest with you, unless you're playing the round one KO prop.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a decent way to hedge it if you're so inclined. But I mean, that's definitely a decent way to hedge it. I mean, honestly, anything kind of ends inside the distance here. I like. James basically died in the octagon at the 7-minute mark against Tucker, even though he didn't get finished till late in 1-3. But if Benitez is hitting him with that stuff down the pipe that Tucker was hitting with, he's going to be completely fucked. All right, so we move on. We got Tyler Santos taking on Montana De La Rosa. I'll start with you. I know you have a play here. He's gone.
He's gone.
Okay. I have a play here. So I played De La Rosa here at plus 200, and I actually think there's still value on the line right now. Kind of like some weird takes by Tyler Santos. Like, I get you look good against Molly McCann. It's like suddenly because she put on a good performance against Molly McCann, who, let's be honest, McCann's beaten some chicks in the UFC, but they're all bottom of the barrel. Like, she is a bottom of the barrel talent. It's like suddenly we're supposed to just ignore the absolute beating she took against Mara Borella. Again, it didn't happen, even though it happened like less than a year ago. It's just we're supposed to pretend it didn't happen. And so, like, that's kind of ridiculous, especially because, look, I don't want to MMA math it, but, you saw De La Rosa hold her own and actually out-grapple Borella pretty thoroughly. And obviously Borella out-grappled, Santos. Now, I don't know if Montana has the strength that Borella has to, drag Santos down consistently. But I pretty much think if De La Rosa gets on top of her, she's probably going to hold her there for long periods. It can probably control her in the clinch decently. Santos seemed to have some issues with body lock against Borella, something we didn't really see against McCann much. And in terms of the striking, look, if De La Rosa stays in kicking range, she's going to get eaten alive. But I don't think Santos has the best hands ever. Certainly does not have the hands that like Viviane Araujo has. And De La Rosa actually outlanded her on the numbers at distance in that fight. She's going to be there landing strikes this fight. So obviously I favor Santos on the feet. I just think it's kind of hilarious in a women's fight where she's not likely to finish. This girl who got dominated by Mara Borella less than a year ago is being priced at minus 220 right now against Montana De La Rosa, a girl who can threaten her grappling and who is going to be pretty busy on the feet. What's your take here? De La Rosa and Santos.
Yeah, I played DLR. I got plus 175. I don't know what the decision line is. Honestly, most of the time the decision lines are better. I don't know why the fuck I don't just take those. I think DLR, when I went back and looked, I think she looked actually like a little bit better than I had like originally thought, like pre-tape, just in terms of her stand-up last fight. I don't think it's like super one-sided or anything like that on the feet. And she has grappling upside. So, like, hindsight, she can look, 60-40, maybe 65-35. So plus 175, I'm fine with it. I don't really see too many reasons. She should be minus 225. Doesn't really make sense to me. I'm on DLR. I think she's got a pretty good spot here to look hindsight favorite.
How about you, Legs?
Yeah, so needless to say, it was kind of a tough spot, like capping this fight after what we saw in Santos' last fight. Most of the pod in general was on Molly McCann at pick'em price, and we saw what happened. But I mean, honestly, none of us really could have predicted. I think the levels that Santos, the improvements she made from the Barella fight to that fight, could that happen here with her defensive wrestling? Maybe, but I don't really think that's the case. I mean, DLR is the best grappler she's ever fought. So I'm not really inclined to think that she should be a minus 200 favorite here. So yeah, I don't hate the DLR plays personally. I was actually looking right now. DLR by decision is plus 290.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
I think that's interesting.
So that, to be honest, that's pretty fucking stupid. That I just
I guess to finish off, I don't think there's like a lot of finishing upside for either girl here. So I think laying over minus 200 is kind of dumb in my opinion. I think if you like Santos, why not just play her by decision? I don't think she's finishing DLR.
Yeah, I agree. Luke, how about you?
So contrarian take, not a strong one. Not a strong. Hey, we've agreed on like everything tonight. This podcast has been boring. We've agreed on like everything. Gotta have some controversy here. So okay, I was also with you guys on the Molly McCann train. I played her for 2 units, I think, at even money against Tyler Santos. And ultimately, I think the quote-unquote mistake I made there is looking way too heavily at the Barella fight. Now, I don't have like any statistics, historics, anything to back this claim. But honestly, I kind of feel like this Barella fight was an anomaly. It was her debut. What we saw from her on the Contender Series, she looked fine. What we saw from her against McCann, she looked fine and good. In the Barella fight, she looked slow, prodding, wasn't really moving at all. I just feel like that performance was kind of an anomaly. And honestly, I've always been pretty low on Montana De La Rosa's grappling. To be honest, I know I'm in the minority there. I feel like it's somewhat overrated personally, even though she's a girl who comes from a traditional wrestling background and a jiu-jitsu background. But I'm trying to assess also win conditions here. Once again, I actually do think the line is wide on Tyler Santos. So I'm not saying that DLR bets aren't necessarily justified, but in terms of establishing win conditions, I feel like Tyler Santos is like a poor woman's version of Viviane Araújo, which makes this fight kind of interesting, because I don't think that Tyler necessarily has the volume necessarily of a Viviane, but I feel like she will win this fight at range, and the consistent theme that we have seen from Montana, despite her, quote unquote, improving her boxing, she will accept the back foot. She has gotten her face beat up in terms of optics in multiple fights. Once again, you're like, oh, it's a bullshit argument, Luke. It's like, that's a judge. Sometimes in WMMA, if there aren't big moments, judges score that who's going forward, whose face is bloody. And it's happened in multiple Montana De La Rosa fights. So ultimately what I'm getting to is that I'm not necessarily convinced Montana, gets takedowns here consistently, gets a ton of top time. One, I don't think she subs her. First and foremost, I don't think she subs Santos. So that leads me to, I don't think she gets a ton of top time here. And even in takedowns, I think Santos just does more on the feet. Once again,
Luke?
I think Luke froze.
Luke is frozen. Okay. Yeah. No, I get what Luke's saying. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with it. But, he's back.
Good in time. Just so everybody knows, this podcast is sponsored by Trifecta. Go on there. No love. You get 25% off for the next month.
Serious? No love?
Yeah, that's Cody Garbrandt's.
Cody Garbrandt now?
Yeah,
Cody Garbrandt paying for ads on the podcast. We'll move on though. We're going to the co-main event of the evening. We got Ovince St. Preux taking on Jamal Hill. I actually have a bet here. I played 1 unit on OSP plus 150, which I know on its face seems kind of crazy given the massive volume disparity that we have here between Hill and OSP. Just like, I don't know. I think Hill is a decent prospect. Like, look, anybody that can put out the kind of output that Hill puts out at light heavyweight is pretty impressive and probably has a future long term. But the truth of the matter is Hill's really fought nobody, so far in his career. I mean, look, Clidson Abreu beating him is impressive, but like we didn't even get to see that fight play out. Like the people backing Clidson there were backing him because the idea was Clidson could land takedowns, and he iced him before that could ever happen. Darko Stosic is horrible. And then before that on the regional scene, he beat a bunch of nobodies. But what we did see on the regional scene was he couldn't really grapple much. Then we saw against Darko pretty much took him down at will. We also saw that the guy really doesn't move his head in the pocket at all. For all the output he throws, he's extremely hittable. And I think he's benefited somewhat from, the fact that he is so much longer than most of the guys he faces, and he won't really have that advantage here. And so, like, on the other side, look, OSP is kind of a shadow of what he used to be. But, the one thing he can still do is crack pretty hard here. And so, like, Hill's there to be hit. He's there to be hit every single fight. And OSP can still hit hard. I think he's going to hit him a lot this fight. Like, can he keep up with Hill on volume? I don't really think so. And I do think in the event that it goes to a decision, Hill is going to beat him there. But I think OSP is capable of winning moments in this fight. Almost as important as volume is big moments. And like he could crack him twice and hurt him and win a round. I think he can knock him out. We just saw it happen with Menafield, and Hill is there to be countered. And then obviously you have like kind of the grappling upside part of the equation. Though I guess for me, it's just I'm not really counting on OSP to grapple. He doesn't really attempt takedowns much. But all of that being said, this is a huge step up in competition for Hill. Like going from Darko Stosic, Clidson Abreu, and a bunch of regional bums to Ovinson Peru, even in 2020, is a massive, massive step up in competition. And so for me, until I actually see that, his durability and his grappling defense can hold up against the upper, and I'm not even sure I would call OSP the upper echelon of the division at this point, probably not, but can hold up against like real hitters who have real finishing ability. I think it's hard to price him at like minus 170. Personally, I'd price this closer to evens, maybe slightly in Hill. But yeah, I have one unit on OSP plus 150. Like I said, not super confident, but it's more kind of this is a prove it spot for Hill more than anything he's done to warrant this kind of a price. Lags, what do you think here?
Yo, Magic's talking shit about your boy Bisping.
So not so much of a contrarian take, I guess, but it's like I can't really gauge OSP fights right, I guess, for me. It's either he comes correct, solid OSP, and you want to back him, or he just absolutely shits the bed. So go in order. Olo Jacek, I backed him there. Solid, heavy hitter. Thought he was going to be able to get him out of there. He gasses. OSP is able to walk up the sub. Then next fight, Ben Rothwell. Ooh, we're on Ben Rothwell by decision plus 400. I thought Rothwell wasn't able to knock him out, and I didn't think OSP was going to be able to take him down, submit him. So cash a nice ticket there. And then Alonzo Menafield in the last fight. I know most of us were on him there. And pretty much if he didn't fight like a dumbass and sat at kicking range for about as long as that fight lasted, probably could have knocked him out, probably could have been on the winning side of that fight. We'll never know. But yeah, it's just tough for me to call OSP fights in general. I think Hill has the power to knock him out on the feet. I think both of these guys are pretty hittable on the feet, but again, that volume aspect for Hill, I think is just going to be too much. And I think Hill's probably going to win a unanimous decision here, if not get an early knockout before OSP tries to get that wrestling game going. Because I think if it doesn't get it going early, I think he might be in trouble on the feet.
See, any take here?
I feel like I lost my right to bet on OSP fights after Menfield, so I'm just gonna pass.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat. I'm kind of just passing.
OSP. It's time to jump up. It's time to get on him too late here. That's the move. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so officially OSP now falls into my very small no bet list in terms of fights that goes right next to Paul Craig. I'm done betting OSP fights just because he's one of these guys who's a complete anomaly. You just don't know which type of guy you're going to get. And even if you know which type of guy you're going to get, he pulls something out of his ass or he doesn't. It's just anomaly, random shit, fluky meme shit. I don't hate anybody backing OSP here based on the fact that, there are still some grappling questions on Hill, as you guys touched on. That was kind of the large reason why a lot of people bet Abreu in the last fight, because the assumption was, he was going to get him down. He was going to really test that. Plus 160 was a good number. We didn't see that. He knocked him out early. So it was one of those, handicapper questions of, we did not get questions answered. So now we're going into the same one again. So I don't hate on anybody backing OSP in the sense of trying to get questions answered. But I guess my slight contrarian take is, once again, in the sense that if, OSP just doesn't do shit and Hill does shit, Hill wins this fight at a moderately decent clip, in my opinion. So it's one of those fights where I think you can really value solid value on both sides pre-fight. Obviously, that will change however the result plays out. But I ultimately, I just think Hill outboxes him, to be honest. But OSP is the guy to go out there and give that lesson. So I would not be surprised if that's the case either. But I just want my money nowhere near this fight.
Yeah. Fair play. Fair play, in the words of our good friend Z. So we move on to the main event of the evening. We have got the GOAT, Marvin Vettori, taking on Jack the Joker Hermansson. Luke, start with you. Now you have a play here. What do you got?
Yep, moved in on a play, I think either today or yesterday. I got 2 units on Vettori at minus 135. This was a play I guess I wasn't necessarily originally looking to target, just in the sense that I know Hermansson is super dangerous in what he does, but I probably did the deepest dive on any fight on this card, probably on this one. And ultimately, really what I came away from, we even talked about this in the group chat, John, even in terms of if you go back to early on against Antonio Carlos Jr., who had some success in that fight and actually beat Marvin Vettori, he still didn't have like a ridiculous amount of control time, even in the takedowns that he got. Vettori was able to, dig underhooks, work back to his feet. It was just more so that blanket pressure game that he kind of brought, that Vettori wasn't able to do what Vettori does, but bringing even that back to Hermansson, where Hermansson could, do Hermansson things, take him down and sub him. But also what we talked about in the chat as well, it's like, can Jack do that for extensive periods of time? Because Vettori does have solid takedown defense. We have seen him stuff takedowns against all other solid wrestler grapplers, Cesar Ferreira, Andrew Sanchez. We've seen him do it before. And, he's also went out there and competed and been better, in my opinion, against the better competition. Where Hermansson, I still have a lot of questions in terms of his striking, where if this fight is upright and extended, he's kind of got that rickety type nature, which kind of works to his benefit in some sense, but I don't think it works against a southpaw and the guy of Vettori, who's just going to walk forward and not let him do that. So when this fight is extended, I really have questions for Hermansson, but in a sense, I also have some questions on Vettori too, because he is a bigger, stockier guy who, despite even going 3 rounds in a lot of his fights, he is breathing a little heavy. He is sucking a little wind, and we have seen Jack go 5 rounds. So I honestly, I think that 5-round consideration is really the only consideration of why Vettori is holding and not going higher here. Once again, not saying Jack can't sub him, but Vettori just proves, even though he's a guy who's moderately hittable, he just walks forward. He does more shit. And despite a guy who doesn't have a lot of finishes, he does have some pop in his punches. I'm honestly not convinced that he can't knock out Jack Hermansson, because honestly, I think he can, especially if we get a more labor Jack Hermansson. He's able to stuff some more takedowns early on. And a lot of people forget about Marvin Vettori's grappling as well, too. It's not something that's been overtly prevalent in his fights, in the aggregate, but it's there. The guy's got good grappling. He's competent there. So I don't necessarily think that Hermansson is just, insta sub here, Calvin Gastelum heel hook. It's one of those spots where I think if this fight's extended, I actually do like Marvin. So I'm not playing it big here. I'm not as confident as probably you are, John, in this one. I only played it for 2 units at minus 135, but I actually do think it's just a difficult stylistic matchup for Hermansson if he's not able to get him out early.
Yeah, so low-key, you want a low-key scalding hot take? Marvin's the better grappler here, everywhere. Jack's got a better top game when he gets on top of you, for sure. Maybe the best, definitely the best in the division, one of the best in the sports. But I honestly think Vettori's the better wrestler. He's certainly the better defensive grappler. Like, we've seen Jack put in some really horrible situations the couple times he's been put on his back in the UFC. And in terms of the fight itself, like, look, I know you touched on the 5-round thing, and that's honestly, you want to know my biggest concern about this fight is for me? My biggest concern is that everybody is on Vettori, and it feels a little fucking mushy to me. But, like, I'm not as worried about the 5-round thing. The one time we saw Vettori or Jack go 5 rounds against Jacare, he basically just played an outside striking game the whole time, and Jacare basically death-gassed after round 2 in that fight. And so he didn't really
I'd say round 3. I think Jacare won round 3.
So he didn't really get pushed that fight the way he might have ordinarily gotten pushed. And so, like, you touched on a lot of defensive grappling, Luke. So, yeah, I'll say that. Like, I don't think Jack's going to have much success trying to grapple Vettori at all. I actually think I can easily see Jack ending up on the bottom if that happens. And in terms of the stand-up, look, Vettori's ceiling might be capped, just athletically speaking, but the guy's going to go forward and unload volume, and I don't think Jack's going to be able to handle it. I don't think he's going to be able to just kick him on the outside and jab him for 25 minutes without getting in exchanges. And to be honest, I have some questions about Jack's cardio as well. Like, that Cannonier fight, he looked like he was starting to fade before he got knocked out. Like, after the first couple takedowns he landed when Cannonier bounced back up. And I think that's going to happen here. I think Vettori's going to be going forward, winning boxing exchanges, and is going to finish him in the 3rd or 4th round here. I can't even give a serious breakdown here because I'm staring at eggs and sausage. That's
looks good.
But yeah, I honestly think Vettori is going to be the better fighter everyone here. And yeah, that's my take. We'll see what happens. Like, maybe Jack just big brothers him, or maybe Vettori does gas and Jack out cardios him. But I'd be a bit surprised at that. Lags, what's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, you guys touched everything. I mean, I do think that Marvin has the solid grappling credentials to hang here, and I really don't think that Jack's wrestling is that solid later this fight goes. Rounds 3, round 4, round 5. So I think if this fight gets extended, I don't think it's a given. I've seen a lot of takes that Jack's just going to be able to outwork him, outpace him over 5 rounds. I don't think that's really a given here. So I actually played the over 2.5 for a unit at -126, and I took a small poke on quarter unit on Jack round 1 sub at +1800. I think that number is just kind of insane stylistically. Submission wise, all 5 of his 6 submission wins are in that first round. So I think if Marvin was going to get caught, it could be that early type of exchange. But other than that, I think this fight's going to get extended. And if it gets extended to that 3rd, 4th, 5th round, I see Marvin winning it on feet, honestly, because I think that he mixes it in the attacks well. The head, body, he's got solid knees to the body, solid punches to the body. And we saw what Jacare was able to do with that same type of attack. He was slowing in that 3rd round. So I don't hate the bets on Vettori at all. But yeah, the 5 rounds is just giving me a little bit of pause considering we've seen him slow in 3-round fights.
See, you're up. What do you think? Vettori fight.
What do you guys think about that meal sponsored by Cody No Love Trifecta? Shout out, huh? Yeah.
Looks good.
Seth Rogen, can you give us your Vettori breakdown?
Yeah, I played Vettori. I think there's 2 really bad matchups for Hermansson in that division. Whitaker and Vettori. Vettori's elite defensive grappler. I think he's I think he's better on the feet. I don't know. There's been some interesting takes that I don't really, I guess, agree with in terms of like Hermansson having better stand up than Vettori. Mostly kind of like don't really buy too much into Hermansson as a whole. I think I have more question marks than most people in terms of like what Hermansson is. I mean, don't get me wrong, he has a strong top game, but I just have a feeling that he's somewhat overrated, even cardio-wise, just because he beat the shit out of Jacare over 5 rounds, which is fantastic. But I tend to think that Vettori is going to have the better stand-up, and he's going to have better cardio. And I get, like, quitter vibes from Hermansson. So, yeah, Vettori.
Yeah, I'm with C here. I got a little rattled during my breakdown by C's cooking. completely threw me off. But yeah, I agree. It's a nightmare matchup for him. I think the only two guys near evens I wouldn't play Vettori against are Adesanya and Whitaker. Like, he just has a perfect style for winning rounds. If it turns out he doesn't have 5-round cardio, that changes. But durability, output, and grappling, like, you don't really need a whole lot more. So yeah, I'm on him for 4 units as well. But yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Do we want to do a live stream this weekend? What are we thinking?
I'm down. This is a good card, honestly. I got a lot of bets personally.
Only if we're doing it for the undercard. I only care about 2 fights.
We're not doing it for the fucking undercard, see. That is definitely not happening.
See, you go live on Twitter. You go live on Twitter for the undercard.
You can Periscope the undercard.
All right.
I mean, he's got a point though. To be honest, I don't mind the undercard. I mean, the 4 fights in a row: Topuria, Flick, Wyman, and Smolka.
You guys might be surprised who you see in Wyman's corner this weekend. Just saying.
I mean, if we do the undercard, Lags and I might be
I might have made an offer to Wyman to be in his corner, and he might have accepted it.
Who?
I would be here for that. I mean, all right, maybe we'll do the undercard too. I gotta get.
I don't care.
If I'm not trying to get a divorce because I take 6 to 12 off on a Saturday night. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll put it out there. Maybe we'll get a contest this week. Come up with something that people can win money on. I'll bet some big prop, and if it hits, everybody will get money. Not everybody.
$500 if Wyman subs Leviat.
All right, what do you got to do? What do they have to do, Steve?
We'll put a tweet out.
I got to think about it. I don't know. I'll tweet something out later.
All right, we're going to have a contest. C's going to sponsor a contest. Last time it hit, so we'll see what happens. Thanks
it hit on an old guy.
It did hit
on an old guy again, too.
Against an overhyped prospect.
The trend.
So, anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. This has been a wild show. C did not start with us. He came back from Narnia about halfway through. Kidnapped a leprechaun who's currently in his car that he's going to pay out this Wyman winnings with. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun week. Obviously, we're going to be on. Just so you know, I'll start posting these links earlier in the day, but every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Unless it turns out C's training every Wednesday, in which case maybe we'll push back start times to 9:30. Is that the case, C?
Yeah, that's the case.
Okay. So anyway, we'll see you guys next week. We'll put something out there about live stream times for this week. Again, if you guys could please just like and subscribe if you enjoyed the show, it would be huge for us. We'd really appreciate it. And anyway, as usual, I'm your host, John Targaryen. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox with our co-hosts, Lags at Lags_Capper, Luke at SWR_betting, and C at C Hansen10. Thanks for coming out, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.